Yes, thanks, Alicia. Welcome everyone today, and in particular, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to some of our AgLink International colleagues. I know Tom's on there and Jim. Thank you for making the time to join us today. As you may be aware, AgLink Australia engage our members across a wide range of skills development subject matters. It's nice to be able to have, as I said, our colleagues from overseas join us in some of these skills development programs. So welcome along to yourselves. And obviously to the AgLink Australia participants. Many of you are already known to Alicia, so it's nice to be able to connect with her again. For those that participated in the recent leadership course, we've had a session with Alicia post that, but some of you on this call today haven't had the opportunity of meeting Alicia. So Alicia has a wealth of knowledge in the recruitment space, and we, I'm sure, are going to continue to use Alicia for a raft of different sort of support, and not only, potentially within your own businesses directly with Alicia. So Alicia, this is a very pertinent subject matter. We, as AgLink Australia, and I'm sure it would be the same for those members overseas, that talent attraction and talent retention is one of the biggest issues that we face within our industry. So to have an expert in this domain area is critical for our businesses. So welcome, Alicia, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. So look, by way of context for everybody, what's really interesting, whilst you'll see the word recruitment in the heading here, I'm actually not a recruiter. So nor have I ever been an external recruiter. I have worked internally inside businesses for about 10, 12 years in HR related roles, HR director for a number of businesses. I've also led internal recruitment teams. And since I started my business about 7 years ago, again, my business doesn't provide recruitment services we're not recruiters. However, we provide advice around exactly that, what Ian was saying. How do we attract and retain our talent? And for us, that means we've got to come up with strategies. So this session is all about helping you understand a little bit about the journey that we're on in this economic climate and how recruitment has changed so much in the last 2 years, and really what businesses need to do to stand out, to not only attract but retain your talent. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. I'd love to get your feedback and opinion along the way. So please, if you've got like, oh yeah, I've seen that before, or you want to add in an extra piece of information to the conversation, please do so. If you've got a question, please let us know. If you want to put it on the chat as well, I'll have that up on the side. So if you want to put it on the chat and I can park it and we can address it at the end as well, I'd love to do that. So the first thing I actually want you guys to do is, believe it or not, get out your phones. So if you've got your mobile sitting there with you, which probably most of you do if you're on your laptop, and I just want to get a bit of an understanding for everyone on the call today. We've got Australian but also Canadian-based people. I'd love to know, what challenges are you currently facing? So for us to get your feedback here is if you open up a web browser, so that could be Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, whatever you use, and you just type in the URL www.menti. So it's at the top of the screen, menti.com. And if you go directly to menti.com, it'll just ask you for a code, and the code is sitting there at the top. So I'll do it. I'll follow along with all of us. So menti.com, and then the code is 66898877. So menti.com. And I actually want you to answer this. So it's free text. You can write whatever you want. Some of you may be struggling to actually get people to apply in the first place. Some of you might be dealing with lots of competitive offers. Maybe you get people to the final stage and you're losing them at the final stage, or maybe you're finding people applying don't have the skills that you're looking for. Maybe your skills have changed in the last couple of years. So yeah, interesting, that person around finding talent to fill technical roles, because I think, we start to look at the skill shortage that we're facing, really internationally. McKinsey put out a study to say pretty much 80% of businesses will face a severe skill shortage in the next 2 years. So as businesses are trying to evolve using technology and they're changing business models, we need those roles to change within your business. So therefore we need new skills coming in, but we've got to therefore develop them. Yeah, finding talent with experience, and that's an interesting one. How do we find people who then don't have the experience, but then can you train the skill? What else do we have? People willing to work the hours. Interesting. Yep, absolutely. Quality of applicants, probably quantity as well, for the sound of a few of you there as well. So look, that's really helpful, because I think it sounds like a lot of commonality that you've got, especially around that lack of skill and then just lack of people as well applying. So interestingly, that's what the research is telling us as well. So yeah, good feedback from everybody. Got a few more people joining, which is good. All right, so I'll keep us moving. Now, I want to share with you a little bit about, well, the fact that recruitment has never actually always been an industry. Recruitment really evolved into actual recruitment agencies. I mean, obviously, employing people to do jobs has always existed, but the official recruitment campaigning actually started after World War II. And you can see some posters here, and that's how they were recruiting people into the war. But also the recruitment agencies actually started post the war with people as they'd returned from the war, trying to find them roles, because they've obviously been out of the workforce, but they've got new skills. So recruitment agencies really kicked off at that stage. And you can see the concept of campaigning, and it was done really visually through posters on the street. And that's really how people came across roles. Then as we moved into the 70s, around then, it was the boom of newspapers. That's really, if you wanted to find a job, you're going to the newspaper. And that was the only way to find roles, really, was through newspaper advertisements. Anybody from that era or might remember, they were really short. They were about this big. They only had about pretty much like a tweet nowadays, really short. That's all they had to talk about their job advertisement. So again, you'd circle it and you'd probably go into that location and drop off your CV. And then as we moved into the 2000s and obviously the boom of the internet, we then went to job boards. So what I've done here is just included a very up-to-date list. I forget which company put this out, but basically looking at those top job boards in Australia. Again, Australian specific. This would be different for each country. For us here in Australia, things like Indeed, Seek and LinkedIn really do sit at the top for the majority of job ads and job boards. But there would be different ones for different industries that you might use. So recruitment has evolved. The biggest challenge many of you would have faced, if you even just think back to maybe 3-4 years ago, is actually we had a lot of people applying, or at least we had more people to choose from than we do today. So what really we were focused on is we've got this, we need to run the funnel, is the term we used to say is we've got applicants, you might have 30 people apply. We've got to really just get very good at screening those people, bring them in for interviews, select our final 2, and then offer a job. So really, back then, that was about running a really good process. So what we used to focus on, again for me working internally, the focus when we ran recruitment was be as efficient as possible. How quickly can we get you a candidate ready to start in their job? That was the focus for us. And that sometimes meant we didn't call back people, because it's like at the end of the day, we just need to get the job filled. So it's not about candidate experience as much. It's more about filling a role for you as the hiring manager. We were very focused on the days to recruit, because downtime for you in your business is costing you money. So it was about speed. You typically did have options. You might have been, I remember sitting with managers and saying, we've got 3 options. Which one do you want to go with? I think we'd all be really happy if we had 3 options at the moment. That'd be like utopia nowadays. So therefore you had a lot more control, right? Oh, I'm in control here. I've got 3 to pick from. Which one do I want? You can be pickier. And it was really about us interviewing them, wasn't it? Like, let me really drill into you in some cases to make sure you're right. It was a much more one-way process, because I'm interviewing you. And it was, sure, it's nice if we told you a bit about the company, but at the end of the day, the attitude was a little bit different. It's like, well, you should be lucky to work for us. So, you know, definitely it was more I'm going to interview you and make sure you're right for us. So it's a little bit more one way. And again, I'm being quite blunt here, right? So I'm just not putting any sugarcoating on it. This is, again, generalizing, but also it is the likely reality for a lot of businesses. It's not to say it was your reality. So this is, I guess, yeah, this is the environment we were dealing with. This is not the environment we're dealing with now, right? This is definitely not the way it is. What we've seen though is companies haven't evolved past this stage, or this mindset, I should say. We're still recruiting the way we did back then. Posting a job ad, hoping people will apply. You know, when we do get one applicant, the way we treat them is still the same. We're still interviewing them quite hard, like, are you technically going to fill this role? And we're still not selling the company. It's not as, you know, how can we get the right people into the business and our culture? We're still treating it as a one-way process. But the reality is, and this has come out of the Australian Bureau of Statistics, this will be quite similar for international. We're seeing, and again, different countries are facing different landscapes. Here in Australia, what we've seen is the boom of job vacancies. So this is the amount of job openings in the country that has tipped over 400,000. Now, this line you can see never really tipped over 200,000 ever. 100, 200,000 job options. Now, if you're a candidate and you want to go and find a job, we have far too many jobs available. So the reality is, for many of you, you're competing against 400,000 other, I mean, not that many because of your industry, but you're in a very competitive landscape. We're all recruiting probably similar roles. Now we're competing. And you know, the war for talent, which is a term that's been used for a long time, it's real. It is absolutely real. So candidates can be really picky about what they apply for. And so we need to think about that in our landscape in terms of, well, what are we dealing with here in recruitment? So today's landscape, we're now dealing with the fact that interviews are being run virtually as well. Now, we know that, but I'd like for you to really think about that. If job interviews are still happening a little bit more virtually than they ever did, we've moved away from how hard it used to be to interview. For example, if you knew that for me to go to an interview, yep, I'm going to leave my employer, I want to get a new job, I probably need to take 2 to 3, 4 hours off work because I need to drive in, go into an interview, have my interview, then race back to work. I've got to come up with an excuse. I need to be quite invested in that interview, right? Nowadays, people can be like, oh yeah, hey, I'm sussing out my options. Yeah, I can squeeze in a 1-hour interview. I can do that on my break, on my phone. Like, people can suss out their options really quickly nowadays as well, in terms of fishing lots of different options, because it's so convenient, right? It's become more convenient to go and interview for a role. But also the challenge with that is we've lost the experience we used to be able to create. So some of you still might be bringing people in, but even for us, with dealing with a range of different clients who are even quite remote, that they are using virtual interviews as well for some stages of the process. Typically the beginning, we'd see if those go well, and then we'll bring you in for an interview. So it's just something to keep in mind that is also impacting the way that we recruit. And it's a positive thing because it makes it more convenient. But from a candidate's perspective, they might be looking at other options. So just keep that in mind. Social media has started to really uptake. So what we're seeing businesses do is using social media to promote their business. Now, not necessarily their roles, but their businesses. And what that's doing to help them is, for a particular generation, for a lot of us here, we will be on social media in some way, shape or form. If you're looking for a job, you're very likely to stalk that company. Google them. What can I find? What do I find on the internet when I put their company name other than their website? Do I see Glassdoor reviews? Do I see, oh, they've got a company page on LinkedIn. Let me see what people are saying about them. So I think the reality is that is what people are doing, whether you like to admit it or not. People are going to be going online and finding as much information out about your company as possible because they want to be informed. We're also seeing that the increase of assessments to get a better fit for the role. So as we see the fact that it's harder. So someone said, oh, making sure people have enough experience. Because we don't have as much selection of what we call the briefcase, their resume isn't exactly what we're looking for. We have to start looking at other things that'll impact this person in the role. And so for many of us, when we've managed people, what makes someone not a good fit for their job? It's often their behaviors and how they're turning up. And it might also be around their speed of learning. How quickly can they learn new information as we're developing them new skills or putting them in a new area? If they're struggling to comprehend information, they might not keep up with the job. So we're seeing companies use assessments to understand behavioral and cognitive capability over CV because they can't get the skill, but they might be able to train the skill. So those assessments are starting to really help companies work out, okay, if you don't have the resume, maybe I can pull someone out of industry or in industry, but move them into a different role because they've got the right behavioral drivers or the brain power to keep up with this role. We've also got to deal with the fact that the candidates have a lot more power than they ever did. And again, that's just a reality that they can be picky. They might be able to be sussing out multiple options, and therefore some of you may be facing a little bit of salary issues that are coming up, or people are throwing a lot of money at people, and that makes it really hard for many of us to compete with that. But definitely they can be pickier. And we're seeing candidates, they're wanting more. It's not just, oh, it's a privilege to have a job with you. They're looking at, and I could spend 3 hours talking about just this circle, about what employees want from you, because that has evolved. Yeah, yes, we hear things like flexibility, but we're looking at things like lifestyle, growth and development. They want quality of life. There are all these things that the research is putting out that's saying, actually, people are making work decisions about their things that are going to impact their personal life. So all of these things that impact us, that's going to start to impact you as employers, is the fact that you now, to attract the right people, you have to have a particular culture or programs in place that can attract the people that you want. That's not nice to have anymore. It's actually, you must have these things in place, because if you don't, you won't be able to source people. So avoiding the culture conversation, it's actually not really an option anymore.
Alicia, can you give an example of a program, a sort of contemporary program that an employer might be using to attract someone?
We have a menu of about 150 programs. So when we deal with building out programs for our clients, depending on what their focus is, everything from, if you look at health and well-being, we've just done some work with a client that employs, the majority of their workforce is sort of young to middle-aged men who are actually quite focused on their health when we went and interviewed them. So we found what really motivated them was they wanted like some weights in their breakout room. They wanted to have some nutrition stuff come in. So we've got like an ex-CrossFit trainer coming to talk to them. So they're really quite focused on their health. So we've gone, okay, well, if that's what floats your boat, let's get in some health people to come and do sessions with you and run a boot camp, whatever you want. So that's very unique though, right? So then we've got people that are very focused on mental resilience, right? We know that mental health is a big problem, lots of issues of male suicide in particular. We can come and run programs with Black Dog that will come in and help you run some education sessions. I could spend a week talking to you about program design. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we do that. That's very authentic to you, right? So what I do for client A, I can't give to you because it just doesn't fit your culture. It's not what your people want. The only way to go and build those things, and again, these things don't cost a lot of money. Just that's the other thing to mention. People think, oh, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of money. It's not. So we say, let's build you out a calendar of things that are of high impact to people in your business and run them consistently. Some of those things will cost money, some of them don't cost money. So I think it's not as scary as people might think it needs to be. I think it's hence why we have a real, like I said, a menu of 150 topics and themes. And then we go and research you, provider options, and who should you come in and help you with those things in terms of programs. So those things are really important, that they're very authentic. So, and again, I'll talk to you a little bit about that, because you can't just pick up another company's, oh, we've seen this company's doing that, we should do that. Like we came up with an idea which is called feedback and fries. Now that sounds like the stupidest name for a program, but again, more of a blue collar tradie type business that we were working with. And we found they actually all loved feedback when we spoke to them, but they never gave each other feedback because it's just not ingrained in them when they were on site with each other. You know, it was a plumbing based business. So it's all for them about sitting down on a Friday. They got hot chips in, they sat around, and it was really, I've just got to give each other, oh, I really liked the work you did here on this job. I liked how you did that. Quite positive based feedback. Again, that program might sound stupid to you, really works for them. So again, that's what I mean about program design. So the reality is you need to stand out, but you need to do that in a very authentic way. And the questions to ask yourself, and these might be something that you write down and you think about later on, is why would someone work for you? What makes you unique? And it's actually quite a challenging question because when we ask this to people we work with and what they say to us, we go, that's really great. But your competitor would probably say that too. So it's actually quite a hard question when you drill into it. Why would people come and work for you? So what makes your culture unique other than the cliche things that people typically say? So what we do when we work with clients is we try and move beyond the cliche, right? And I'll show you some examples of that. And how do people find out about your culture? So often people say the best thing about our business is our culture. And I go, great. How do people learn about that? Oh, I've got no online presence whatsoever. Well, that's disappointing because you've got this great opportunity to talk about your culture and what it's like to work for you. And the fact that this actually, for many, when we talk to your staff, they say, this is the greatest place I've ever worked. If I'm looking to apply for a job, I can't see that because I've got no employee stories online. I've got no way to find that out. And also, what experience will they have when they join you? So it's really interesting because people think, oh, you know, recruitment, if I just write a really nice, shiny, glossy job ad, that'll fix my problems. That's not going to, it's almost the last step we do with clients is look at your job ads. We actually start at the core of what's really going on inside your business and how do we best promote your culture from an employee perspective. And again, I'll show you a little bit of a framework. So just to give you an example of a bit of a case study. So this is a client of ours called TKV. They're based in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. They do the tracks, as you can see here, tracks for vehicles. That is a pretty specialty company. And they've been our client for a number of years. They've used us for predictive index and a few other things. But for them, they know that for them to grow over the next couple of years, they have to start attracting talent. And it's a really hard space because it's so competitive in terms of getting good quality people. So what we did with them is, and you can see there, oh, we're the fastest, we're experts, and we're focused on quality. That's great. That's sort of their company position. But I said to them, like, why would people come and work for you? Like, and why does the company exist? What's the company purpose? So what we did is we ran a bit of an exercise over about 6 weeks where we talked to their staff. So we don't just sit with your executive team and say, let's work out why people work for you. We actually go and talk to your people and find out what they love about the business. And we run a number of workshops to get that up and out. Quite short, like it's not time intensive, but we believe that actually your staff hold the keys to the information here. So we worked with them on a company purpose statement because what is attracting and retaining talent is that they feel that they're a part of something bigger than themselves, that the company has purpose and meaning, and they want to be a part of that, right? We know that that's actually really motivating for people. But this company didn't have a purpose statement. They kind of had a bit of a vision, you know, to be the largest tracks distributor in Australia. Well, that's not very motivating. Why does the company exist? So to ensure your tracked machinery keeps moving today so you can reach your potential tomorrow. Well, that's when we dig into that, that's about making sure that these companies that they support, they can keep their businesses moving and that their tracks aren't down, their machinery isn't down, because every day that machine's not working, they're not generating money for their business, which is typically supporting their families if they're out on farming property. Then we worked on, well, what's in it for the employees? So we call this the employee value proposition. So what's in it for the staff? So when we ran some workshops, we've come up with this heading, or they've come up with this heading. What matters to you matters to us. So we found that this was a really caring business, that the management were very empathetic. They really checked in on family members. Oh, you've got some sick kids, tell us all about it. It was a really, really empathetic business. People actually cared about each other. They kept saying we're like a family. Now, we try and avoid using the word family when we talk about your culture. And this will probably shock many of you, because a lot of people do like to say, oh, we're a family culture, it's family business. Okay, sure. The challenge when you use the word family is that for those of us who do have family, they're your blood, family is forever. Your child might do something quite naughty, they might break the rules, they might break the law. You will still forgive them and they will enter back into your family unit. However, if an employee steals from you, you will probably fire them. They will exit. So the rules of a family are different, and hence why we say proceed with caution using the word family too much. We like to use the word tribe. We're like a really strong tribe here. There are rules of the tribe, and we're going to keep you in the tribe. We're going to protect each other, and we'll fight to the death and all these things. But if you break the rules of the tribe, we kick you out. Like, there are some points where you can't return. If, for anybody who's dealt with any type of theft or corruption or misconduct, you will exit those people from your business. So hence why we try to avoid family with language selection. But you can see what matters to you matters to us. That's a really empathetic statement that still captures the feeling of family. And then we actually broke down their culture, or their EVP, employee value proposition, into 3 areas. So they were all about potential. How do we help our staff reach their potential? And again, you'll see the language is really unique here. It's not cliche. Oh, we're a very honest culture. We act with integrity. We try and avoid that. You can see belonging is in our DNA, and this is the word we used instead of family. So belonging, you all really feel like you belong here. You'll always be seen and heard, and not just a cog in our tracks, right? Again, using their language. Why we use personal values and goals, so you can see that. And we have fun along the way. They had Nerf guns in their office. They were really jovial, they love to have a lot of fun. Okay, let's tell people that. So again, it's on their EVP headline. We're then able to take these statements and put some of this in their job ads. We take these statements and we're developing staff videos and testimonials to put on their job ads and on their website. All of this is very authentic to who they are. It's not complex, right? It's easy for people to understand, but also people can very quickly go, oh, I'd love to work there, or, oh, I don't like the sound of that. And so we want people to do that. We want them to check in or check out once they learn more about your culture. Another example is we had a client out in Dubbo, so very far, New South Wales. And for them, they were a scientific biomaterials type of business. And so for them, they worked on their EVP, and you can see their great opportunity in unexpected place, which is Dubbo. So they can only recruit from interstate cities, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, because they're looking for bio degrees, engineering degree, like very, very specialty expertise. And so we're having to attract people to leave the city and move to Dubbo. And that is incredibly hard. And so someone actually mentioned on that Menti earlier, attracting people out of the cities. And this is how they went about doing that. So they've got 4 headlines. So unlike TKV with 3, they've got 4. And they loved the word real. So what they found is that it's real people. There's no shiny, glossy, fake. They actually don't like that fakeness that some people bring to it. It's very authentic people, real down to, they kept saying we're down to earth. So they came up with the concept of real success where you'd least expect it, real people, real work, real global impact, because they actually have global reach, and real change and ongoing improvement. So they're always about improving the business and how they do things in their processes. So again, this really helps you understand the culture and the business and what it would be like to work there from an employee's perspective. We then turned that into a number of videos for them, which again, LinkedIn, we put them on Facebook, because we actually start attracting talent from Bathurst, Wagga Wagga. We then get on Facebook groups and we start to promote the business through business Facebook groups. And we promoted our videos, and then we promote our job ads through these Facebook groups. And the job ad, which is very hard to see here, but we actually incorporate those EVP statements in their job ad. And this is what it's all about. So you can't actually fake this stuff. So I can't say, here's a great job ad that we could replicate. It has to be really authentic based on what we call your employee value proposition or your culture. But so there's 2 examples so you can start to see it turn into life. And the reality is we need to put this type of effort into recruitment because it is so hard, right? You're competing against so many people. Putting up a job ad with a few bullet points, you know, must have strong attention to detail, must have effective communication skills, must have this degree. No one's applying for your job if you're writing it that way. We really do have to sell the opportunity. We have to sell the culture. We have to talk about what their experience will be like. But you need to get clear on what that is for your business so it's very consistent time and time again. So I want to just put it into context for you. So obviously you've all got your business goals and you've got that. Where are we heading? How can we achieve our business goals? And for the most of you, one of the biggest impacts that we'll start to see for you will be around how do we get enough people or the right people in those jobs to do those roles. So we actually start at the beginning. So we start at, well, what is your company purpose? Why do people want to work for you? Because why does your company exist? We want to know the impact you're having on the world. What positive impact are you having? Because people want to work for companies that are making a positive impact somewhere, somehow. What are your values? And how can I make sure my values align to your values? And what's in it for them? What's the employee value proposition? We also want to make sure we get as much data around your people as possible. So for those of you who've seen me before, we use a tool called Predictive Index to work out what drives and motivates our people. And also we do engagement surveys, we do feedback workshops, we heavily engage with your staff because again, you can't just go and build this stuff in a boardroom by yourself and think that that will work. We want to hear from your people to get a very authentic view of who you are. And then we can start to think about these 3 pillars. How do we attract people into this business? How do we inspire them? And you'll see we don't use the word retain on this model because retain is like, I want to keep you captive. How do we inspire people to do their best work? And when they do get headhunted, or we don't want them to go and start looking for another job. And how do we grow and develop our people? Because we know there's a big skill gap that's going on. So whilst we've got a huge skill gap, one of the highest things that people want is growth and development. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to bridge that gap and give those skills and development to all the people who want growth and development. So it's a bit of a catch-22, or it's a bit of a funny situation there. And then we've got a range of programs, or, you know, we encourage you to look at those 3 pillars, because once you attract people in, I've got to inspire them and I've got to retain them. That's the reality. And then I've got to grow and develop them. So we see this as actually more like a spinning wheel than anything. They're all interconnected. So whilst you can work on your hiring strategy or job design, if we think about the recruitment space, you kind of can't do that one thing without it impacting the others or without there being a flow-on effect. So that's how we like to think of it. Is actually it's all very interconnected. So it's hard to just do one piece of the puzzle. We typically like to work on the middle and then work our way out so we can start to impact the whole thing for you. Does anybody have any questions so far, or any reflections, any insights, any feedback they want to share? Very open to your feedback or insights before I continue.
Alicia, you mentioned using tools to do some assessments on a, because you can't see that in a resume. Can you explain the process for actually doing that? Because I'm not clear whether many of our members would actually necessarily use those tools. So, as part of the process, how do you go about doing that? And then once you get that information, obviously assessing it and trying to make sense of that.
So look, we use a tool called Predictive Index to help with profiling the behaviors needed in a job, because we know that behaviors are a great predictor of how someone's going to turn up and be a good fit for the job. So we use a tool called Predictive Index to help you profile the job, and you take an assessment. It takes about 10 minutes to do. And then it gives you the behavioral construct of the job. So is it really fast paced, multitasking, doing 100 things on the go, always changing, or is the job actually stable, repetitive? You're going to do the same thing on a daily basis. Like, just to give you one example, does the job require you to go out and talk to people on a regular basis? You spend the majority of your day talking, or do you spend the majority of your day with your head down doing work? I can't put to simplify it, I can't put a really chatty person in a job that requires them to not talk to anyone all day. They will just eventually get frustrated and or disruptive. We find that person, I need you to sit here all day and do your job. And they're off talking to people in the breakout rooms, and then they're off talking. I'm like, I need you to sit here and do your job. We've just got the wrong person in the role. So I think this is where that behavioral alignment is really important. What we also know is when we profile the job and then we start assessing candidates, what's their behavioral drivers, and we're overlaying that, we can actually ignore to a certain extent their skills and go, well, actually, we can teach you how to do this job. It will only take us 2 weeks, but we actually know you have all the right behavioral tendencies to sit here for a long period of time. You're very meticulous. You like repetitive tasks. Head down, get your job done. I can teach you how to do the job. Great. I can pick someone who didn't have any skill. I think we would all like to hear that option, right? If that was an option where we could teach someone their job quite quickly, but we knew that they would do the job the way the job needed to be done, that is a fantastic outcome. And that's the work we do with our clients across all industries. Like, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, the same science applies. So we'd have you profile the job, and then you profile all of your candidates that come in. Some of you will have 10 candidates, some of you will have, 100, depending on your job. And we're looking for behavioral alignment, and in some instances over their CV. So even if they don't have all the skills or experience, behavioral and cognitive. So the other assessment we issue candidates is how fast can you learn? Because if I go, you're a great behavioral match and you learn really quickly, I don't care that you only have 2 years experience and I needed 8. Like, I know that if I actually invest in you over 12 months, you're going to get me that outcome in 12 months' time. So it's getting you to think differently about recruitment, and tools help you do that. Tools help remove the risk. So if we think about how do we alleviate the risk, you get more data before you start, and that's through assessments.
I think, Alicia, given the comments around such a shallow talent pool and potentially a shallow skill base pool, employing for attitude and then training for skill is something that maybe we need to be more, as you said, more cognizant of, rather than looking at the resume based on their experience or their skills.
And look, that's really where we specialize. So for people who did session with me a few months ago, that's really where we focused, is on doing your PI and having a look at job profiling and really going down that avenue, because it's so needed. And we love to say, oh, we want to recruit for attitude and train for skill. I don't see a lot of companies doing it because it's hard. It's hard to do it off of one interview and go, oh, I think they might be good. There's too much risk associated with that. We get fearful and go, oh, no, I think I'll keep looking. I'll wait until I find the person with the experience. But you're more likely to make that decision and take some risk, because it won't feel as much risk if I have data. I think we all feel more confident if we have data and evidence to go, actually, I can predict how this person is going to turn up. I can 100% hand on heart know that this person is going to turn up this way and want to work this way, because we get them to take their behavioral and cognitive assessment. And again, these assessments, the behavioral takes 5 minutes. I'm not talking about something that takes an hour. Candidates take a 5-minute assessment. That's how quick and easy it is, but it's heavily accurate, heavily validated, been around for 6 decades. 28 million people have taken a behavioral assessment. So we use one of the most validated and proven tools in the world. It came out of Boston. So again, speed is everything in recruitment, and we want our candidates to do it. So that's just a little bit of background of that data. So I wanted to also just highlight this sort of model for you, is we want to get the right person for the right role. We always hear that, right? When we talk to companies and go, why are people unsuccessful in your business? It's typically because of the way they turn up. It's their behaviors, right? It's what's going on. How they turn up to work every day is not aligned with what you want. They're not doing the job the right way. It's not their briefcase. It's not their skills and experience. And sometimes it is their values or their ethics. They might have been a pathological liar. I don't know. There might have been something going on there. That is a little bit harder to predict. So we use the model of head, heart, and briefcase because it's easy to remember. We encourage our clients to focus more on the head. How are they likely to turn up and how fast will they learn? If we know that about someone, we can then develop the briefcase for them, and we can then help them work out, well, how do they fit into the role? So here's a role roadmap. So this is, Ian asked me to sort of put together or share with you guys our template for these things. I would definitely say this is a little bit down the rabbit hole, right? So this is kind of like, again, last thing we do with clients, not the first thing we do with clients. But in terms of getting clarity about a job is really important. And you'll see there that we've got a box on the right-hand side that says, what are the behaviors needed in the role? And we get that data from your PI job assessment. So when you profile the job, we say, well, these are the behaviors. What we typically see on company job descriptions is you all use the same cliche language. I could almost do a direct correlate. Oh, they must be honest. They must be transparent. They must have good and effective communication skills. They must have high attention to detail. You all write the same things. And 9 times out of 10, they're not the behavioral requirements of the role. Every role has a unique behavioral construct to it. Some jobs are really proactive and we need you to lead the charge. We need you to get up every day and start something new and drive things forward without instruction. There are other jobs where I don't need you to be like that. I need you to actually wait for the phone to ring and then I need you to handle a customer complaint. I don't need you to be proactive. I need you to be more responsive. I need you to be a strong listener. I need to make sure that you're very service orientated and how can I help you? I don't want you to be highly independent. So we can actually start to really differentiate what the behavioral construct is of the job and then have a look at the person. So we spend a huge amount of time on those behaviors. And then we do obviously make sure that we've got clear success measures, clear competencies that we needed, and they're typically leadership competencies, decision-making, things like that, and your company values. So this is our job on a page, because we think if you're doing anything more than this, you're probably just providing potentially fluff, is the easiest way to describe it. There's just too much stuff that's not contextually relevant. There are some jobs where you need to provide in key responsibilities that can be expanded out massively. But if someone's responsible for 24 things, how well do you think they're going to do those 24 things versus 5? So we try and get you to be very clear about what you want, because that's the hardest thing, is making a big complex thing quite simple. So we can share this roadmap with you in terms of a template. It's an editable PDF, so you can literally type into it. It's really well designed. But again, many of you will already have job design templates. So just to share that with you. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you was, so in terms of the do's, because obviously this webinar is the do's and don'ts of recruitment. So I thought I'd actually put together a bit of a list for you. What do we recommend? After this call, stalk your own company online. Put your own company name into Google and see what you find. Is there Glassdoor reviews? Do you have a LinkedIn page? What's on your website? Go to your own website. How inspiring is it? Our websites used to be only for our customers. Our websites are now also needing to be designed around the future employee and candidates. Do you talk about anything in your careers page? Do you even have a careers page? Or what it's like to work at the company? That's the biggest thing we see when we work with our clients. I'm like, I can't find anything about your culture in here. And some instances you might be really good at that and might be really clear on who you are and what it's like to work there. Get clear on the role before you start. So often it's speed to recruit, and I'll just use the job ad I did last time and it's 5 years old. Don't do that. Get really clear on the job as it stands today. Don't use job ads that other people have written that years and years old. We really do need you to start afresh in many instances. And write the job advert with a candidate in mind. Again, I could run you a whole session on how to write a job ad effectively. But what we see is this, again, very cliche, very vanilla job ad. That won't work, because again, remember my graph, you're competing in a 400,000 job openings. You can't, you got to stand out. People will be selective And if your job isn't inspiring or motivating, then they'll be like, well, why would I apply for this? If you make the criteria too long, I often see these criteria that are like, you need these 15 things to apply. No one's applying. So keep it simple. Know your audience and where they hang out. So when we talk about where should you post your job, where your ideal employee is sitting, where are they hanging out? What events are they going to? Where are they online? Do they even use LinkedIn? If they don't use LinkedIn, don't post your job ad on LinkedIn. Like, we find that for a number of industries, we don't use LinkedIn for posting ads, and other industries, it's the only thing we do. So you've got to work out where your audience is, because that's where you need to be. And in some instances, that's community pages for industry network groups. It can vary from company to company. I say widen your net. And this is where I like to start thinking about, well, it's not all about their resume. We get really obsessed about resumes. Oh, their resumes, they're not perfect. They don't have enough industry experience. Okay, you may need to hire out of the industry and train a skill, or they may not have the exact amount of experience, but they've got some good foundational qualifications that you could leverage and train. Like, I think that's where widening your net can be really helpful. And then using tools like PI or other things to work out, are they a good behavioral fit, cognitive fit? Are they going to learn fast enough? And then it's important that, whilst I keep saying we need to talk about the positives of your culture, you talk real to these people. Don't just in interviews go, well, this is the best place you're ever going to work. And, it's about the reality. What is the reality of working here? Because if you oversell something and go, oh, we're going to provide you with lots of growth opportunity, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually look like for people? Is it that we'll set you up with a mentor? Is that really going to happen? We'll make sure within 2 years you'll be in this role. Well, how is that going to happen? What's the process? Well, we sit with you and do a development plan. Like, talk to them in the reality of what they will face. And then the challenges. So you might say, look, some of the challenges we face here is, making sure we've got enough resources, or I don't know, be honest with them as well, because then they can make a true assessment of, oh, actually, I'm keen and I'm up for that challenge. And again, you'll see they're using certified tools to help you understand if someone is a good fit, because the reality is, if we have to go beyond the CV and the briefcase, you're going to have to leverage things like that to help you feel more confident to proceed. What you shouldn't do, what are the don'ts? Don't write vanilla and generic job ads. Sometimes when I run workshops with people, I will stalk your company and your job ads before sessions like this. And we can start to go, okay, here's a good example, but here's something that we should definitely stay away from. Once you become really hyper aware of this stuff, you start to look at your own job ad and go, oh, I think you can all go back to your job ads and start to think, is this really appealing? Don't assume everyone understands what you mean when you say we're a great culture. What does that mean? Like, be more precise around what is the experience like. Don't interrogate your candidates. Believe it or not, I still see that happening. I sit in on some interviews for a particular client just to help them coach their managers. I'm still seeing some behavior that is very cold and formal. Okay, I'm here today to interview for this role. Let me, like, question. Like, I'm thinking, this poor person is getting interrogated. This isn't an interview. And then, oh, do you have any questions for us? Okay, you haven't at all talked about the role. You haven't had a conversation. You've just asked all your questions, gone, do you have any questions for me? And you've buggered off. There's no, great, tell me more about that. Oh, good. Actually, the way we do things here is keeping it conversational can be really helpful. And at the end of the day, you have to share information with them, right? You've got to find a way to do that, because they're also assessing if they should work for you. I said they don't think short term. The reality is, if you've got a growth strategy for your company and you've got roles to recruit in the next 6 to 12 months, you have to start recruiting now. Now, that's a scary concept, because a lot of companies go, oh, someone's left, I'll post a job ad, 4 weeks, maybe another 4 weeks, and they'll join. You've got a 2-month downtime period. You can't fill roles in 4 weeks anymore. Like, it just takes so much longer. So you actually need to kind of always be recruiting, so to speak. And that is typically through social media strategy and other things for business promotion and building a brand so people are interested to come and work for you. But also longer term, if you've got new roles that are coming up in a year or two, you got to start thinking about it now, because otherwise you might put your business at risk. Also, don't take too long to engage with a candidate. It might seem like a straightforward thing, but I also still see companies, we post a job ad, but then we wait 3 weeks. I'll wait till I close the job and then I'll call people. Those people are all gone, just so you know. They've all left. They're not waiting for you to ring. You've got to, it's like they are applying. You need to be on that every day. And this is why recruitment has changed so much, because that used to be the process. Now it's, they apply within 24 hours, you got to ring that person. If you're interested, you ring them straight away. We had a client do that who actually did have a lot of applicants coming in, and our advice to them is 24 hours is the max they can sit in your Seek applications. Someone, you have to ring them. Like, I don't care who rings them. Have your office admin ring them, say, thanks for your application. You're looking, you know, really good feedback for you. We're going to come back to you in the next 48 hours. So you ring to buy time. Like, if you ring to buy time, great. The candidate's like, oh, that's something that could turn into fruition. And don't be dishonest. It's a straightforward. But again, if you oversell something, oh, you're going to be the senior executive in 2 years' time, don't be dishonest. Don't tell people they're going to get something they're not. It will cost you. So what I did want to do is leave some time for some questions, if anybody has any. So open to the floor. If those of you who don't want to demute, you can put it in the chat. Those who want to demute, please do so. Open to your questions from the floor.
Alicia, I've got a comment in regards to recruitment. I found over the last couple of years, there's probably been situations where I've found someone that needs some training, but then I've learnt that my existing employees needed some training as well to help train the new person.
Yeah.
So I suppose, yeah, it's probably more of a statement, not only to focus on the person you're recruiting, but also your existing skills of your team, existing team.
Look, such a great comment. And in our management program we run, we actually have a whole section in there around, we call it capability mapping for your team, because you're spot on. What you can often do is you can bridge some of these recruitment gaps with your own team in some instances, not all the time. So actually looking at the capability of your team today and what they're likely to need in the future, and doing a bit of an exercise to go, oh, actually, we've got all these skills here. We've got lots of interest. I've got 3 or 4 people who are really eager to learn. How do I help them bridge the gap? And then once then maybe we could bring a junior person in. That might be easier to find, and they could coach and mentor the junior person. So again, that's a bit of a longer term mindset though, right? But in many instances, a really good option, and sometimes your best option, because finding that high skill person off the street is going to be really hard. You're better off developing talent from within and coming in at a more junior level.
Alicia, as you know from our last conversation, we've shared with you some job descriptions that relate to sales agronomists and or agronomists that many of our members, in fact, I would imagine all our members here, whether they be Australia or international, employ. In fact, they obviously the cohort that extends value, and advice to farmers. Those job or job descriptions. Can you give some sort of feedback? I know we've shared probably 3 or 4 of our members' job descriptions. Can you share some sort of commentary around whether you think that they've articulated the role well or not, and any advice on how to improve those?
Yeah, so the feedback I was actually giving Ian before this session was, I read through them all, and keep in mind, I have seen job descriptions across every industry, be it pharmaceutical, like every industry there is. I was very confused by what an agronomist does, even though I read 3 job descriptions. I had to go online and Google it, and even Google told me different information. I then went and looked at other Seek ads, got a mixture and array of new information. I'm still unclear of if it's sales, if it's service, if it's advice, if it's subject matter expertise is needed. Is it revenue, some are revenue generating and others are service based? It was really confusing, is my honest opinion on the having a look at what it is. And I think once I spoke to Ian, I said, can you tell me a bit more about it? He explained it. I went, oh, that makes sense. That wasn't in any of the job descriptions I read. So I think what happens when we're often in an industry is we all assume we all know what we all mean. It's helpful to get really clear on what the job does. Some of the job descriptions had all three in one. Some jobs only focus on one area of just sales. You'll go out, meet customers, generate revenue. Like it's a pure sales role. So I think you all mean different things, but you all call it the same thing. So that's where it gets confusing is you're using the same job title, but you mean different things. So that was my feedback to Ian, just around that. Hence why I couldn't put together a generic one, because I was like, I don't know what that generic one could be, because it's not. Once I started to pull it all together and I looked at a few online, I was like, this job is so big now that it's not humanly possible to do this one job, because it's actually like three things in one. So yeah, that was my feedback. Yeah, Scott, good one. Think of it like the plant doctor who sells solutions. Great. And I think that's where the simplicity is awesome. So I love simplicity, and that's where it's quite helpful to go, okay, what are the skills then? If they have to go out, meet new people regularly, and maybe it's the same people they're meeting on it. Like, are they meeting, we say new business development, but is it really new business development, or is it actually going back to the same set of clients that I already have? There's only 20 of them and I go back and see those 20. We call that account management, not new business development. So again, I don't understand. And again, that's just me saying very openly, I'm always first to admit if I don't understand. I don't understand that role yet. But it doesn't mean you all don't understand it. But I would say from an outsider looking in, the importance of getting clear on what it is would be helpful before you start recruiting. Because if you're trying to attract different people or different skill sets, you might be able to say, well, here's actually what the role is.
I'd be interested some commentary from the group with regard to what they say and what they want from an agronomist. And what I mean by that is that at the end of the day, from what I understand at least anyway, that by employing an agronomist, they need to generate revenue. They effectively are selling a service, and that's either a fee-for-service arrangement with the customer, or they're selling the products that that business actually has in their shed. I feel that we don't want to say that the role is about sales. We want to portray the role as this. It's a technical role, which attracts that sort of individual, and then their expectation is that they sell as well. So I'm just interested from the group whether we should be very clear about what we expect from an agronomist.
Steve, you got to say something?
I don't think we should shy away from the sales component.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, if they're not commercial, we don't have them. So I think the problem probably has been that we focus too much on the technical and service side, and I think it needs to be a mix. So, I mean, it's no good. We've all seen, I think, through our businesses, we've employed some terrific agronomists, and great advice, but just haven't been able to ask the question. So I know there's models around how we do that, is to go, well, a service fee, that type of thing. But I think, or personally, we need to have a sales component in, and groups will probably be different how they view that. But from our end, we want to further invest in these resources. They need to be commercial. That's reality. So.
And I think, Steve, you make an interesting point, because if the role is responsible for closing sales if they carry a quota, do these people carry a quota? Like you must sell this amount of product every month, or do they carry a quota, Steve?
Well, it's probably a bit loose, Alicia. It's a good
Okay.
smile there, Anne. That, of course, they've all got, we've got junior agronomists, senior agronomists.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, if we are where we need to get to, is there is reward for return.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you need to be upfront to go, well, hey, your cost, employing you is X. First step is covering their costs, and then there's an expectation on return. So, I mean, that you have to be careful with that, because we don't want to scare individuals. They come in and they're a trainee, and you put up the big numbers that they need to cover their costs. So it is it's not an easy one. Otherwise, we'd probably all be doing it a lot clearer now. So.
It's a bit like doctors. I think doctors don't. Doctors' purpose is to keep people healthy. They're not often in it for the money per se. So they tend to be quite actually bad business people. I think they need people around them to actually capture the value. And agronomists are a lot like that. They actually don't want to have this veil over them of the expectation of sales. They want to be able to go out there and make plants and animals healthy, and see the farmers succeed in a prosperous way and all that sort of thing. So I think this is this issue I think we've got, is that we're not being very clear on what we expect from them when we're putting out a job ad. We're saying it's a technical role. We want you to go and improve farm sustainability and that sort of thing. But really, at the end of the day, we want them to be able to sell the stuff that we've got.
But I think about, again, when I work in industries that are technical based sales roles, and you've got technical experts who have to go in and generate revenue, as soon as you use the word sales, it freaks them out. So I understand what you're talking about, unless you've got, Steve, you've got mavericks in the room and persuaders and captains who are actually naturally motivated by those things. You can teach them what we call influencing skills. So we don't even call them sales skills. It's still our sales program, but we call it influencing. How can you influence the customer to make the right decision for their business? And we disguise sales training as an influencing course. So again, you can make technically brilliant people who are not what I would call behaviorally aligned to sales, people who are proactive, quick to connect, people orientated, fast moving, all these things that traditionally we see in sales. We can take a more stable, calm, steady, lower risk person, and we can teach them influencing skills. So I think, but what is the investment that you're all doing around training for people who are agronomists? They've come out of uni, they're more junior, they don't have skills to influence. How much focus does your business have on influencing the customer to make a better buying decision? Because that's actually called, well, it's really creating a sales culture without calling it a sales culture. You can create programs to do that. Like when we talk about customer success teams in tech businesses, we do the same thing. We do influencing training. It's the exact same training program I put through the salespeople. I just call my slides different. It's the same training course. And so that's kind of funny when you think about it. How do we create that revenue generating culture of we've got to grow the business? We do it through using psychology, really, about what language do people need to hear to get on board. So there is ways forward. I think it's about being creative about how you do it.
It would be interesting, Alicia, if you don't mind me interjecting, Tom, or some of our international colleagues online. Is this conversation resonating with you, and is it sort of relevant in your marketplace as well?
I tell you, Ian, go ahead, Jim.
When you were just talking about hiring an agronomist, and there's junior and senior, we want an agronomist. Let's take pharmaceuticals. You'll hire somebody, train them on the product, and expect them to build relationships. We expect the same thing, but you also need to understand science and biology, and you need to understand equipment and application and timing. Oh, and we also want you to come from the farm. It'd be really helpful if you grew up on a farm. And then we want you to have a relationship, and it would be really great if you could bring some business with you. And we want to do all of that for the least amount of money we can pay you, so that our competition then come in and hire you away from us.
Yeah. Very good, Jim. That's brilliant. That's an easy problem. That's easy. That's easy, right? Yeah. So I think, yeah. All right. So I'm conscious of time because we're here on an hour. So look, I'm very open to any of you who want to, you've all probably got my details. If any of you want to engage in a conversation or have a chat with me further about your business and what you're going through, because obviously you'll all have your own landscape here. Super open to that feedback post this session. So yeah, pop me a note if there's anything you want to talk about in your world that we can help you with. So thank you everyone for your participation today. It's been a really good conversation. Hopefully you've learned a little bit, got a little bit more context, and realizing you're not alone in this challenge. But I guess my takeaway for you is to, you've got to try a new approach because we're 2022 and the landscape's changed. So what you were doing previously, we might need to relook at. So thank you, everybody.